friends? What's going on? It's your boys, Sanchez and Cedric, and we are back together, sitting on these comfortable couches.
Amen.
Ready to just have a conversation.
Amen.
It feels so good.
Hallelujah.
I feel the presence.
Hallelujah to the couches.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
My back appreciates it.
That's
my back
right.
and my backside. Hallelujah.
Yes.
I'm
So
channeling my
for
inner Francine. Those in the family will know what I mean.
That's hilarious. So for those of you who are new to our podcast, let me give you a little backstory.
My mom's name is Francine.
Nice. So here's the backstory. So Cedric and I, we met, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago.
2016
at a symposium that we were both speaking at, and just hit it off. And then 2 years later, we would find ourselves both unemployed for reasons that we've already disclosed.
We might disclose them again, but not today.
Yeah, not today. But it led to us doing this podcast and sharing our experiences of being the tokens, being the articulate black men in majority white spaces, but quickly realizing, who we are and what our calling is in life. And so we, in 2019, probably started to pivot.
2018.
Was it 2018?
Yeah, it was November 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
November 2018, and then we just started podcasting, and
we had a lot of time on our hands. Unemployment, how long? 22 months for me.
22 months for Ced, I think 11 months for me, and a back injury, and a newborn kid, and no job. So I was definitely a dad, wife, dad, mom, and enjoyed every minute. But it also, just brought a lot of healing. It built a brotherhood and friendship. And it led us down this road of anti-racism and dismantling white supremacy. And
my culinary skills increased greatly during that time as well, which those of you who started following me on Instagram, because of Token Confessions, are discovering he doesn't post a lot of anti-racism stuff on his IG, but man, he be posting the food porn.
Ain't nothing wrong with it. Also, I learned how to bake bread. Cedric gave me some tips, and
that's right.
We just picked up new hobbies. We both got into smoking.
Whoa!
Food.
Wait a minute. Oh,
food.
What?
Food. Smoking food.
Yes.
Which has become
See where
a love
my
and a
mind
passion.
went? I went straight to the sticky icky.
Yeah,
straight to the sticky icky. But yes,
yeah.
You got your Traeger. I got my Kamado Joe,
and I got a green egg.
Yeah, that's right.
That's got a green egg and a Traeger, and he got a Kamado Joe, and so that's kind of where we've been. And over the last couple of months, we've tried to resist the podcast burnout. So we also have personal lives and jobs that have to pay the bills, and so we're back. We're back, and we're trying to be more consistent for a little bit. We've got some things in the works that we hope we get to share soon. So. Make sure you are subscribed to this podcast.
And leave a review. We ain't got a review since last June. We need some more reviews.
We need it. We need your voices. Also, I want to shout out to our new Patreons. I had your names written down, but I'm sitting on the couch and it's somewhere else. So shout out to our new Patreons. Thank you guys for your support. You all for your support.
Yes.
And if you haven't become a Patreon, man, join the family. Support this podcast. But without further ado, Sid, what are we talking about today?
So, man, that was just total brain fart. Where do I begin? So
we
I'm
had a
preaching
conversation.
this weekend.
Yeah, we had a conversation.
I'm preaching.
I preached this past weekend. You're preaching this weekend. So we're swapping information.
Yes. So the church that I am a teaching pastor at right now, we're in this series called The Hero's Journey.
Yeah.
Or it might not be called The Hero's Journey, but basically that's the theme that we're working for them.
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar with The Hero's Journey explicitly, basically it's described as this. The hero's journey is a narrative pattern first identified by mythologist Joseph Campbell in his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Campbell identified a universal motif of adventure and transformation that runs through virtually all of the world's mythic traditions. That motif revolves around three basic movements. Within that framework are specific movements which typically cast a hero or adventurer who is called to a task greater than themselves, plunged into a crisis, transformed by the journey, and returned to normal life with knowledge, wisdom, and or power from said journey. So personally, that resonates with me because I'm a huge fan of Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, most any Disney animated movie of the last 20 years, Pixar stuff. Gosh.
Can we just break the stigma? Black people can like Star Wars, Harry Potter, and Lord of the Rings.
We've been unliked all that kind of stuff. If y'all don't know, y'all got a lot.
Some of us were closed-minded and sheltered, but have changed and morphed over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I entered the world of whiteness before you. We all know that. Yeah. So I mean, this hero's journey informs a lot of these. They either inform a lot of these stories that we're familiar with, and or they are a lens through which you can understand, dissect some of the themes that are going on, some of the movements in the story. So George Lucas actually really consulted Joseph Campbell as he was writing the original trilogy. You can see this motif in The Matrix. It's very clear in The Matrix. So the first week was kind of the overview of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Second week was the first of the stages, the call to adventure. So the first stage within the first of the three movements is the call to adventure. So I am going to be tackling the second stage within that first movement, which is the refusal of the call. But just to give you quickly, there's 12 different stages of the hero's journey. There is the ordinary world. So basically their origin, where they start off, right?
Yep.
Bilbo starts off in Hobbiton. He's happy. Everything's peaceful.
Yep.
He's got no problems. Same thing with Frodo. Luke is on Tatooine, just living with his uncle, and everything's gravy.
Yep.
You know,
Katniss is in District 12.
12, hungry.
Yeah,
but,
hungry, starving.
She's living. She's surviving.
Yep.
And then the second stage is call to adventure, then refusal of the call, meeting of the mentor is number 4. So in Lord of the Rings, this is whenever Gandalf steps onto the scene. Gandalf is quite obviously the mentor. It's Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars. It is, I would say, in the Avengers, in the MCU, it is more than likely, in a lot of cases, or for the entire MCU, it is, oh gosh, look at me. I'm supposed to be an expert on this stuff, and I'm just
the Avengers, come on.
Nick Fury.
There we go.
Right, he's a mentor figure, but so is, in Iron Man, the guy that he meets in the cave.
Yep.
Right, when he first gets that call to adventure, initially just that call to escape, to survive.
Yep.
So you have all these different.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
This whole cycle is going to make me go rewatch everything with a completely different lens, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And I'll get to my climax of why we should be examining patterns in general.
Yes.
That's so good.
So then there's the crossing the threshold, when you've entered into this you've left the ordinary world and you've gone into this world behind the scenes. So in Harry Potter, it's when he leaves number 4 Privet Drive and goes to Diagon Alley and enters into the magical world, which is climaxed or culminated in his first time arriving at Hogwarts. Then there's tests, allies, and enemies. So that's when, for example, when Harry first meets Draco for the first time, it's very clear that this person, at the very least, is going to be an adversary. You can think of just various different moments where someone meets their enemy or the person that they're up against in their quest, in their journey for the first time. The seventh stage is approach the innermost cave. So that's when they are really into the okay, I almost find it easier to use examples than try to explain it.
Yeah.
So, because some of this is new to me, like I'm literally processing as I prepare for Sunday.
Yeah.
And granted, I only have to talk about the second phase, which is the third phase, which is refusal of the call. But when I think of approach the innermost cave, that is Empire Strikes Back. That's when Luke is on Dagobah. He goes into the cave and has to face this embodiment of his father, of Darth Vader, which of course he doesn't know is his father yet, but obviously that is a precursor to his first head-to-head matchup with Darth Vader, which in a lot of ways is where you hit the eighth stage, which is the ordeal. Parenthetically, death and rebirth. So this is the death and resurrection kind of moment for the hero, where they hit absolute rock bottom and they have to be reborn in such a way to make it to the next stage. So there's the reward or the seizing the Force. There is the road back to the ordinary world, the resurrection, and then the return with the elixir is the final 12th and final stage.
Yeah.
Right. So here I am preparing to preach this message, and I'm looking at both the big theme, but then also the specific stage that I'm supposed to be focusing on, which is refusal of the call. So that's when Luke, initially when he meets Obi-Wan Kenobi and they come back to his uncle's home to find that the stormtroopers, in searching for these droids, have murdered his family, or it's actually before that, when they're first in Obi-Wan's house and he's saying, hey, you need to come with me to Alderaan after they view the message from Princess Leia. And he's like, I got too many things to do, and, you know, the harvest, and da-da-da-da-da. And, of course, Obi-Wan sounds like that's your uncle talking, right? It's that. It's Harry not believing he has what it takes to actually be a true wizard. It's Neo when he first meets the Oracle and says he doesn't believe that he's actually the one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the refusal of the call. So that's the week that I'm working on.
That's good.
But as I was thinking about this, I try to be very inclusive, or as inclusive as I can be, in particular as a cisgender male preaching. Now, fortunately, in the church that I'm a teaching pastor at, we have 2 female voices on our 6-person preaching team. In fact, one of them started off this series that we're on. But still, I feel like I can speak into some of those things, even as a guy. Yeah. Just acknowledge their presence, not try to speak for them, but acknowledge that there's this other experience and perspective that's different than mine. And sharing this with Emma, and just saying how we were having a really hard time trying to figure out how someone like Katniss fits neatly into this, because I mean, within the first 10 minutes of the first Hunger Games, not only is there not a refusal of the call, but she jumps into action as soon as her sister ends up being chosen in the reaping. She's, I volunteer. I volunteer tribute, right? So there's clearly no refusal of the call there. And then just thinking about other movies, in particular, a lot of the Disney princesses, there is no refusal of the call. Mulan can't go on the adventure fast enough. If anything, other people are trying to refuse the call for them.
What's your interpretation of why? As to why?
Well,
that is.
I mean, that gets to where I'm going with this. So we start to wonder, how do women fit into this? My wife Googles, and what does she find? She finds the heroine's journey, which is slightly different than the hero's journey. This woman scholar, Dr. Maureen Murdoch, who was intrigued by Joseph Campbell, but he had some problematic views when it came to women.
Yeah, no doubt.
Basically saying that, basically, of course they're not heroes. You know, they have this completely different role. Now, I'm paraphrasing, in essence, what he said, but, I mean, it wasn't far off. In fact, I think I have the quote right here. Nope. Check that. I don't. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. The hero's journey is a search for one's soul and is chronicled in mythologies and fairy tales throughout the world. This quest motif does not, however, address the archetypal journey of the heroine. For contemporary women, this involves the healing of the wounding of the feminine that exists deep within her and the culture. So she wrote this book in 1990, The Heroine's Journey, Women's Quest for Wholeness, as a response to Joseph Campbell's model. And here's what Campbell's response to her model was. Ready for this?
I'm ready.
Women don't need to make the journey.
Ooh.
In the whole mythological tradition, the woman is there. All she has to do is realize that she's the place that people are trying to get to. That may be true mythologically as the hero or heroine seeks illumination, but psychologically, the journey of the contemporary heroine involves different stages. And in essence, and I'm skipping to answer your question, the last stage within the heroine's journey, instead of bringing the elixir for everyone else, so to speak, it is the integration of masculine and feminine, right? Because, jumping back to the beginning, the heroine's journey, the first stage is separation from the feminine. So we see that vividly with Katniss in that the opening scene. What is she doing?
Working, hunting.
Right.
Protecting her family.
Her family.
The dad was gone, died, and she had to step in and fill the role.
Right.
Fill the void.
Right. In Brave, the opening scene that we get is this picnic with her family where her mom and her dad are there, and her dad gives her a bow. And what does her mom say? Oh, she's a lady. And he's like, oh, come on, she can learn how to do, right? It's the beginning of her separation from the feminine, that when they fast forward to the present in that timeline, she's fully embraced the quote, masculine construct.
My mind instantly went to Moana.
Perfect example.
We read that book. Julian loves that book, and that's a prime example.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. So her dad, Moana's dad, says, "Hey, stay here. You need to be the chief. You need to take care of." Right? The village, where she's like, there is a bigger force at play here that needs to be conquered for the survival of our village, of our island, and I am going to go on the quest. I feel this supernatural calling to go on this quest. And again, to my point, it's her father who is trying to refuse the call for her. So looking at that these moments in these stories and these mythologies and these fairy tales that I personally have always enjoyed and appreciated, I had this awareness of how women didn't fit neatly into the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell presents. So continuing, separation from the feminine, then it goes to identification with the masculine and gathering of allies. So for Katniss, that's initially meeting Peeta, meeting Cinna. Haymitch is her mentor. He's her Gandalf, albeit a drunk one.
I'm here for it.
Right. And, of course, making an ally in Rue, trying to gain the favor of sponsors and the people who are going to be watching the Hunger Games.
While still having to, even as she's introducing herself, playing down the feminine soft side.
Right.
like when she goes to the Capitol, and she's the girl on fire.
Right.
And it's
Right.
Yeah. Or when she shoots the arrow into the apple.
Right.
With all the men in the room.
Right. But those are two very vivid images illustrating that movement, right? Because, we watched the beginning of Hunger Games last night, and there is nothing about the costume beyond the fire that accentuated her feminineness in any way except for maybe the headpiece.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. So, moving forward, it says road of trials, meeting ogres and dragons. So meeting whatever trials, obstacles, or your ultimate enemy on the way.
Maui.
Right.
Tafiti.
Yep.
Yeah.
Finding the boon of success. Katniss wins the first Hunger Games. Heck, she even, almost wins the second one. But instead... awakening to feelings of spiritual aridity and death. Right? Then initiation and descent to the goddess. Then it moves to urgent yearning to reconnect with the feminine. Then the healing the mother-daughter split, which is literally brave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're trying to mend the bond that was torn, which of course she interprets as the tapestry that she cut with her blade, when it actually was the literal split between her and her mother.
And that's the narrative of Katniss and Peeta's relationship.
Yeah.
Until the very end when they're married with 2 kids.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which that song, by the way, is absolutely gorgeous. And
Which,
incredible.
To your point, perfect segue.
Yeah.
The next stage after the healing mother-daughter split, healing the wounded masculine. Is that not Peeta to a T?
Wow. I didn't even know. This is me here. Literally, I'm hearing this for the first time, and we're processing this together.
Right. Which I'm sure many of you are sitting here thinking, okay, what does this got to do with Token Confessions?
A lot.
It's coming. It's coming. And then after healing the wounded masculine, it reaches the final stage, which is the integration of masculine and feminine. So the heroine doesn't have to, quote, choose between masculine and feminine. She doesn't have to make this binary choice. She can embody both. And that's where the heroine lands. Yeah. And she's fully embraced, fully accepted, but more importantly, she fully embraces and accepts herself.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And that's the end of Hunger Games, essentially.
Right.
Da, dun, da. Oh, man, that song at the end, the poetry, the music, oh, my gosh.
Right.
Man, I literally, when I finished it a couple weeks ago, I literally listened to that song, I'm telling you, probably over 100 times. Just the words, the musical, like the climax, right? Like the epic, perfect ending of a person who is having to redefine a normal based on the trauma. Right. That they did not wish upon themselves. And having to fall prey to this cycle. And then having to literally ponder, man, what do I need to do to not have to go through that cycle?
Right, because as much as Snow is the initial enemy, so is the character played by Julianne Moore in the movie, who's like the leader of the resistance. Yeah. And Katniss coming to the realization that she's just as bad. Yeah. Which
on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Right, but basically quote, embodying that same, quote, masculine energy that Snow has. Yep. She's basically what Katniss would become if she fought, no pun intended, fire with fire.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And that's the trap, right? Like that's the trap I see, and that's the patterns that I think we're hitting on tonight. Right. Is that you do see this cycle play out between people, individuals in general, and it can lead you, but the final destination can put you in very different places. Right. As we're seeing. Right. And my thing is, in my life, I'm not trying to end up back where I started. Right. Which is or because I'm hurt by the opposite, President Snow, I'm just going to go to the complete opposite and end up fighting fire with fire and being just as evil.
Right.
Yeah, that's so good.
Again, perfect segue. Because here's where I found myself. Because there's a couple of things I try to do anytime I preach.
And side note, these patterns, you could literally use this to analyze and analyze scripture.
Right, because
it's the same.
A lot of them are mythological stories.
Yes.
I mean, not Noah, Moses.
Right.
I mean, I'm doing refusal of the call. His refusal of the call is initially when he kills the Egyptian and then flees and hides for 40 years. And then even when he encounters the burning bush, it's like, well, Lord, I can't do this and I can't do that.
Yes.
Send someone else. Don't send me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I so badly wanted to preach on the book of Exodus and Moses.
Oh,
yeah, because it is. But part of that message that's been inside of me for the last year and a half is not only the trust issues and the identity issues, but it is that refusal of the call,
right,
and leading from your place of insecurity, and seeking holistic restoration. Yeah, because at the end of the story of Moses, he dies off and everybody dies, and then Joshua takes up the mantle. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm correct. Nobody makes it to the promised land.
Not that generation, not
Moses' generation particularly. So, oh man, this is so good. This is so good. But I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. So one thing I try to do is I try to work in scripture. Yeah. Now that might sound funny to some, but the church that I'm a teaching pastor at is a fairly progressive one that's done a lot of deconstruction, reconstruction work. And one of the things that I think anyone who's on that reconstruction journey has found, that one of the things that you absolutely end up deconstructing and is oftentimes really difficult to reconstruct is your view of scripture. Yeah. Yeah. So personally, that hasn't been a huge struggle for me. Same. But I know for a lot of people, it's a big struggle. So I'm gonna draw on some scripture narratives, but I also tend to, I can't help it, pull in pop culture references or movies, music, whatever, to illustrate a point or make a side joke. But that also helps drive the point home. But then I also will present or share my own journey and be mutually vulnerable, how I've experienced this, or more specifically, how I am currently experiencing this. If I can, I try not to present myself as the one who has, quote, arrived, and the audience needs to get to the place that I have, already achieved. Right. Yeah. So as I'm looking at the hero's journey, I'm trying to think about how my own life, how my own journey fits into the themes of the hero's journey. Mm-hmm.
What are you finding?
What I'm finding is when I pulled up the heroine's journey, I connected and resonated with that one more than the hero's journey. And here's why. Mm-hmm.
Same.
I don't think it's a mistake.
Same based on what I've heard.
Right.
But we're also both black men.
Right. But, and there it is. Because I can remember when John Eldridge was huge in white evangelical circles. It just never hit for me. Yeah. Because he's big into the mythologies and the 4-part story of creation, fall, redemption, recreation. Mm-hmm. And he drew on a lot of pop culture mythologies to drive that point home. But then, of course, there was Wild at Heart, which was just like all about guys being the hero and da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. And as a black male, particularly a black male in mostly white spaces, I'm not the hero. Yeah. I'm not the one chosen to be the hero. Yeah. I'm dark, but I ain't tall. Yeah. And I ain't the kind of dark and handsome that, quote, the damsel in distress is ever looking for, not to mention the fact that I had a very strong female presence in my house that I didn't think of women as being these damsels in distress that needed saving. Yep. So that stuff just never really truly resonated with me, and
same.
still to this day doesn't. Someone like mentions the book Wild at Heart. No offense to John Eldridge, but I almost throw up in my mouth.
Yeah. There are a lot of books that people mention. I'm like,
I'm just like,
and then you factor in the toxicity of purity culture.
well,
And misogyny and homophobia and all of these.
We ain't got time for all that. But what I did find is that, again, I resonated with the heroine's journey because women are a minority in a patriarchal world. They are not, quote, in the construct. I shouldn't even say, quote. They are not in the construct of patriarchy meant to be the hero.
Right.
It's like what Joseph Campbell himself said. Oh, they're already there. They're at the end goal. Right? They're the one that the hero, quote, rescues or returns home to.
Yeah. I had a question I was going to text you and Ray, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there.
Okay.
Considering the facts of this hero complex, considering this argument between complementarian and egalitarian.
Oh, gosh. You know I've been ignoring them.
I know, but what hit me today after I left the gym was, can a complementarian not be misogynistic? Are there complementarians that are not misogynistic and that don't fall prey to that ideology of, women have their place at the end of the story, right? Like that's what we're trying to chase and pursue.
Yeah. I like to try to be generous, but no.
The answer to the conclusion I came up to was
right.
No.
Like, just because it isn't violent doesn't mean it's not misogynistic.
Correct. Because objectification is something that has been passed down for generations. Right.
They're still objectifying women.
Right.
In the, quote, most polite or passive way possible.
So how do roles play in this? Right. So because I think a part of this cycle that we're talking about is not only should we redefine roles, but it is the oppression of how we have defined roles and racialized identity and sexuality.
But see, that's the thing. And so, like, for me, and I don't know if this is going to answer your question, but as I started looking at these stages, I started substituting words. So instead of separation from the feminine, separation from blackness. Instead of identification with the masculine and gathering of allies, it's identification with whiteness.
Token confessions.
And gathering or being assimilated into white spaces.
Yeah. Given permission to appropriate and acculturate my being and my talents.
Right. Road of trials, meeting ogres and dragons, having to deal with microaggressions, passive racism,
absolutes.
Right. Being this black face in a white space, having to navigate all of that implicit.
Cedric is on fire. The fire department is on its way because he is dropping bars.
It's not the cops.
Spitting fire.
It's the fire department.
It's the fire department.
It's literally the fire department. But yeah, having to deal with people's implicit, subconscious racial bias constantly
that we don't want to put measurables on.
Right.
Because you can't quantify that.
Right.
Oh, man. Don't get me into that.
But as you're navigating that, right, here it is. And this one, you don't even have to change. Finding the boon of success, a.k.a. being the, quote, respectable Negro.
Yeah.
Right? He's black, but not really.
Yep.
Next one. Awakening to feelings of spiritual aridity or death. Basically finding yourself in this place where you're just absolutely worn out and exhausted, having to basically be this person.
Token burnout.
Right. to be embraced and accepted, not making waves, not upsetting the apple cart, maintaining the comfort of white people.
Yeah, putting your emotional health at the expense of white people's progression.
Right. So,
which is very toxic and very dangerous.
So for me, that stage was probably literally the beginnings of it was Trayvon Martin.
Yeah.
But by 2014, it had hit its peak.
Yeah, that's so good.
All right. Next stage, initiation and descent to the goddess, or initiation, descent to your blackness and your spirit, your cultural divinity.
Yeah.
Getting in touch and starting to discover
who you
this
are.
Rich tradition, but not just who we are, like this rich tradition of black culture.
Yes.
What it really actually truly means to be black, to be one of these people who are the ancestors, or who their ancestry, their heritage is surviving and thriving and flourishing in the midst of oppression.
Yes.
Of genocide, of slavery.
Yes.
Of creating something, specifically blackness from literal erasure of your humanity, your ethnicity, and your culture.
Yes. Language.
Right. Initiation and descent to blackness.
Yes.
Next stage. Urgent yearning to reconnect with the feminine. Urgent yearning to reconnect with your blackness.
Yes.
Reconnect with your people.
Yep. Stage 4. Racialized identity. Yep.
Right. Healing the mother-daughter split. Healing that sense that I have betrayed in some ways. And by being a token that I am have been complicit in white supremacy. Recognizing my own black self-hate and how it was directed at other people.
Thus our podcast early on.
But even me getting to that point where, like I mentioned the other week, we were in Freedom Park with our street leaders and finally not even feeling the need to police their blackness in that space.
That was a point of freedom.
That was a recognition that I'd definitely come a long way.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
because
so
I policed my own blackness in white spaces, but I got so good at it, I didn't even have to think about it.
Yes.
But when other black people came along,
Cedric.
I'm like, don't screw it up. Don't go messing it up.
Don't mess it up for everybody.
Because you on your own. I can't help you.
Yeah, man.
Right?
Yeah, that's so good.
I'm not like them.
Yeah, so good.
I'm just me. I'm Cedric.
Right?
So
good.
I'm
good.
OJ. I'm not black. I'm OJ.
Okay. Okay.
Then
so good.
Healing the wounded masculine. Healing, the wounded, the wound that we've caused to ourselves.
Yeah.
Forgiving my past self, not, quote, canceling myself for the ways that I've played into the lies of white supremacy that it's taught me about myself and other people of color.
And on that note, like a part of this is there is a self, like we have to take personal ownership and responsibility, but there's also this is what I mean when I say that's the cost of naivety and oblivion. Yeah, is because when you go into these spaces with colorblind rhetoric, and again, I'm reminded of like you don't know the damage that you're doing because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And you have this perspective that whether your family taught you, your environment taught you how to view things, but there is that weight of self-responsibility, and nobody's devoid of that. But there's also like this is the cost and the weight and how expensive naivety is. Mm-hmm. And I would say it's equally as expensive as pride.
Yep.
Even though it's so innocent, it's so pure, it's so like just, I mean, it's like two little boys, right? Mm-hmm. But man, I would say that's where your trauma and grief is coming, is how could I be so naive? Well, for me, I'll speak for me.
Yeah.
Mine was like, how could I be so naive? How could I be so heavenly minded that I was not earthly aware? You know, and then the self-deprecation, which again is a part of the cycle of healing and getting back to full restoration.
See, that proximity to power is a powerful drug.
Absolutely.
And again, look at the mythologies.
Yeah. Who wants to stay oppressed, right? But that was my mindset.
But bring it back to the mythologies.
Yes, okay.
The emperor doesn't want to kill Luke. He wants Luke to join him.
Yes.
Join me or die.
Yes. Katniss, you would be basically the queen of the capital. You could have it all. Sanchez, like if you just keep your mouth shut and just not say certain things and not post certain things on social media, like Sanchez, you could have the keys to this kingdom, making a lot of money. Like we talked about this with Adam Thomason. Like the keys are there. Oh yeah, and it's so easy, and there are people capitalizing on that, especially right now with racial climates. But man, like and yeah. So anyways, yeah. And then the conclusion.
The conclusion is the integration of masculine and feminine. So in our journey as tokens, it's from, and I'm again processing this out loud. Could it be that it's the integration of our fully black selves back into the ordinary world? Bringing our full black selves before the world that we, quote, left when we went on this journey.
I don't know.
But
I don't know if we're back at the same starting place.
We're not the same, right? Because Frodo, right? He returns to Hobbiton, but he's not the same.
Yeah.
None of the four hobbits are.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. We kind of have that experience by proxy through social media, right? We got people that now that we've, quote, returned before them through that format, they don't know what to do with us.
Right.
We're different now.
Which makes it really hard to reintegrate into a society that you have either outgrown or who you are at the core,
right?
Even though you're living from your blackness, that blackness is just it's redefined,
right? In
a way to where, like, now on the opposite end, you could not be restored, and you fight fire with fire, and white people are just white devils, and you get the Dr. Umars of the world,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Like, but on the side of healing and that restoration, with Katniss and Peeta finally, being able to live out their love and build a family. Notice that in that scene they were alone.
Right. See, I was about to make an illustration from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but you haven't watched it yet.
Well, I've seen all episodes except the new one.
Except the last one?
The last one.
And then, that's what I'd be ruining.
Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah. No, I meant to watch it today. I'm going to watch it. I'll probably go watch it Friday.
Word.
On my drive to Knoxville in my Tesla. In my Tesla.
There you go.
I'll just touch the steering wheel every once in a while.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
You know those cars are designed to do that.
That's hilarious. One of the bad boys crashed recently out there in Texas.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, I am. Yeah.
I'm still a firm believer in it. And it's inevitable.
Look, my hands would be on the wheel. I'm driving the car.
Yeah. And it's a fast car. But anyways.
All I know is this. Every time they make these things that are supposed to see people, what's the one thing they don't see? Black people.
Really?
Remember when they had the Xbox that had the bar that was supposed to detect your motion and it wasn't picking up black folks?
Yes.
Kodak camera, the colors were made for white people, so black people look dark as hell.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, man.
So until they work out them kinks,
no doubt.
No, sir. And I'm going to look twice when I'm crossing the street. If I see a Tesla coming, I'm going back inside because that thing ain't going to see me. It ain't going to see me.
Yeah,
I'm not
man,
taking my chances.
Hilarious. That's hilarious.
Nope.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
Now
Let me see a picture of the engineer team. If they all white, then I'm all right.
But to the point of this podcast and the thing, kind of going back to a comment I made earlier, like we have to understand that life is full of patterns. And like this is why I have become a proponent of sociology and studying patterns in human behavior. And I'm not claiming to be an expert. I'm claiming to be a student.
Sounds like CRT.
Yeah. And oh gosh. Oh my gosh. And,
not the demonized version, but
yeah. Right. But it helps us to see things. It helps us to for me, like it's helped me to approach situations less offended and less defensive because I can recognize where people are and I can discern by my understanding and knowledge of the Enneagram, discern spirits and be able to somewhat navigate these spaces. But I do think once you've gone through that cycle, like how do you not get back on it? That's the biggest thing for me is like, once, like for me, I feel like I'm at the end of the cycle, and I'm like, I'm in the fields, and I'm looking like, man, I'm about to rebuild a family, reestablish who I am. Like I've drawn my line in the sand, I've fought my fight, I've dealt with the trauma, I've healed, and I'm healing and growing, and I'm not going back.
Yeah,
and I'm not going back, and that's the place that I long for folks to like get to.
Yeah,
that's the liberation, but you can't get to that ending without going through the process.
Yeah, well, and it's
like the process is unavoidable,
right? But see, this is what they're currently doing at The Witness, right? With the Leave Loud,
wink, wink.
They are calling people to make this journey. They're calling specifically people of color to be courageous enough to make this journey, and unfortunately, many of them are refusing the call.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
For
stage 3.
Right, but it's fear.
Yep.
It's
securing the bag.
Security.
Yeah.
Or the lack thereof.
You've built a lifestyle that you're used to and you don't want to compromise it. You don't want to jeopardize it. You fear that you won't be able to have those opportunities. And Tyler said something really profound about like this idea of like for black leaders and communicators, particularly like chasing that platform. Like, man, you got to stop.
Yeah.
Like, stop chasing a platform that wasn't built with you in mind.
Yep.
In the way that you think it was built.
Right.
Like, that stage ain't built with equality and equity in mind.
Right.
It's built with you being the token and knowing your place in mind.
Right.
And you being, like, constantly put in check for what you do, how you think, who you read, how you write, how you communicate.
Right. And see, that's where I think that last stage, playing off the heroine's journey of integration of masculine and feminine, I think it's the integration of myself back into these places, but fully myself without having to constantly police my blackness in those spaces.
Absolutely.
That I'm able to reintegrate white spaces as my full self.
Yep. Because you have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose.
Right.
Like
you have nothing to lose that you haven't already lost.
Exactly. And this is where I think, to Richard Rohr's point in his book, Falling Upward, that's the beginning of living in the second half of life and finding your true self. Like, that's where the journey begins, because you've had to deal with the first half of life and go through the cycle to get to the place of now you're living a life of maturity, and you can really enjoy who you are and where you're going.
Right.
And everything else is minimized. And so, yeah. Falling Upward by Richard Rohr is a book that changed my life as I was on this journey in this cycle.
Right.
And I would 1,000% recommend it, and warn you that it's incredibly heady.
Yeah.
Get the devotion with it and process and go through that stuff. But it was so liberating. And I think that's what kept me progressing and marching forward
Right.
is knowing that I'm almost at the second half of life.
Yeah.
And I just turned 32 in April 5th, actually, and feel like I can breathe.
Right.
And so going to preach this week, I was unapologetically myself. No disclaimers.
Not having a preface.
Not having to soften my message. And I think at one point in both services, I said, like, I have nothing to lose. Like, I have no ties to this church. And I know that what I'm saying, like, even though your pastors might not agree with, or might not be able to publicly affirm it, but they're not going to disagree with what I'm saying. Because the purpose of them bringing me in and this topic of going deeper with God is to challenge the norm and what we consider normative, but it's actually dysfunction.
Yeah.
And so being able to, and I think preaching this past week, it was incredibly liberating because I did not have that weight.
Right. See, that's what it was like for me, without getting into all the long story and details. But the irony is that I'm going to be preaching this message, right? We're recording this on Wednesday, April 28th. By the time you all hear this, it'll be the day after I've already preached the message. But the day that I'm preaching, May 2nd, is also the 5-year anniversary of my first day at Watershed when I was there full time.
Ah, gotcha.
Right. So
how ironic and full circle.
Exactly. Which those that know that I was there for 14 months. Then I was gone for 22 months.
Yeah.
Unemployed, but so I preached again there for the first time. It would have been March. Yeah, it would have been March of 2018 because I was like the week before Austin Channing Brown came and preached one of the best sermons I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so yeah, it was about 20 months, 20 months between when I left there and when I came back and preached for the first time and took up this role as a teaching pastor. That being said, and to your point, like I integrated differently, having my full voice with nothing to lose.
There's nothing like being on the upside of the cycle and going back and facing what traumatized you.
Right, but then also
not in a negative sense.
Not that place specifically traumatized me.
Thank you.
But like my whole journey through full-time vocational ministry.
That's what I was referring to.
Which most of the damage had been done before I even came.
Exactly. That's what I was referring to.
At Watershed.
Yep.
And even though there's some things that they did do, like one, they owned those things.
Absolutely, which is rare.
Which is why I wouldn't be back there in the role that I'm in if that hadn't happened.
Yep.
But also, like when I came on staff, the book they had just finished reading, Falling Upward.
Wow.
Yeah.
How ironic.
Right.
How ironic.
Right.
That's so good.
One of the books that I was handed when I came on staff was like, you need to read this book.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, going there helped me recognize, it gave me language.
Yeah, absolutely.
For what I was experiencing and didn't even know I was experiencing and didn't have language for to articulate.
Bingo.
I was so far into the deconstruction process without knowing it that I was already reconstructing.
Yeah, bingo. Yep. And I would say that a lot of that happens early on when you're rediscovering your blackness.
Right.
Or your feminine elements or whatever it may be for you.
But and this is...
It's not, and what I mean by that is not having the language and being frustrated with yourself that you can't communicate.
But those two things were going on at the same time.
Yep. Gotcha.
Reconnecting with my blackness, learning the full history of white supremacy and racism and race as a construct, but then also the deconstruction, reconstruction of my faith. Like those things were happening parallel with each other.
Yeah.
And the beginnings of both, I didn't even realize at the time were happening.
Yeah. That's so good.
But both were a fairly smooth journey for me. Having to deal with basically going through naming the ogres, naming the dragons, and recognizing that the ogres and dragons oftentimes were people that I loved, and people I had community with.
Yeah, man.
That was the hard part.
That's the grief. That's the grief and agony.
Yeah.
And that's the I think for me that's what took me the longest. Is grieving a former employer for about 2.5 years.
Right.
You know, because you do see the potential, you love it, it changed you, it shapes you, it impacts.
The potential, the security.
Yeah, all the package.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, over time, like you begin to redefine what's normal. And you find your voice and you find who you are. And man, and I think that's what I hope people who have definitely been with us since day one.
Yeah.
I hope you're encouraging you see that, like in real time. Like that was, you know, whether it's me coming on and learning how to verbally process, you know, and you pushed me to do that, you know, and being able to share our stories and our journeys and stuff. So, but yeah, this was so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Any final words? Thoughts?
I'm just thinking.
We're going to post a sermon.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll post your sermon and we'll post mine as bonus content.
Word.
And stuff. Because, I mean, it is, I mean, we love for y'all to see how we approach these from a church perspective. And for some of you, I know some of you don't go to church. And this is spiritual food and nourishing for you. So, yeah, maybe we'll post some of that.
Yeah. No, the final thought that I have, and it's not even a fully formed and processed thought, recognizing that a large part of our audience are white allies.
Yeah,
is thinking, okay, where do they fit within that journey?
Yeah.
And I would say this, it's not by being an ally to us, it's about going through those steps yourself.
Yes. Back to I said you can't avoid it.
And it's about you divesting of your whiteness.
Yes.
And we haven't even left enough time to unpack that.
Yes. And we can't do it for you.
Right. You might be able to form some more thoughts around it, maybe bringing a...
I'm not saying we can't consult.
Right.
But I ain't doing it for you, and I ain't doing it with you.
Yeah. Well, we might be able to bring on one of our trusted friends to have that conversation with, you know, individuals who've already done that in the process of doing that.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, friends, it's been awesome.
Word.
It's been great. It's good to be back. It's good to be chatting and chopping it up. But yeah, again, thanks to you guys for listening. Make sure you go rate and review us, and the fire truck's back because we've been
still hot, son.
We are still hot.
Burning up the tracks.
Hot. Yes. So if you're not a Patreon, please check out our page. Support us if you can. And again, follow us on Instagram. We've got a lot of content there.
Some fuego Negroes up in here.
Some hot niggas. Some hot niggas. Yeah. We're on Instagram and
Fire.
Twitter. Yes. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of that stuff. So in the meantime,